working with Rinpoche, Khyentse Rinpoche, on the upcoming movie Hema Hema. So if you could tell us more about it.
Well, I think Hema Hema is a very interesting project. Because of Rinpoche's standing in the international film circle, some Bhutanese might not even look at that as an alternate film, When they think of travelers and magicians, when they think of Hema Hema, they think, oh, there comes Dzongsar Jamyang Khyentse Rinpoche with another big budget, high-flying movie. But of course, when you go to the international stage, it's a very obscure film. But Hema Hema is very interesting because what we are trying to do with this movie is it's really, we are trying to pair, this is coming from, because I'm the producer, I'm talking more about the production side. Jigme can tell you more about the visual side. But then from the production side, what we're really trying to do is we're trying to pair Dzongsar Khyentse Rinpoche's standing and his stature in the film world with the youth of Bhutan. As I was telling you earlier, two of us are the same age. We're 32 years old. I'm the producer, he's the cinematographer, and two of us are like you could say the Ages of the movie. Everyone else is so much younger than us. The purpose of this is we want, like I said earlier, there's Rinpoche who has his standing and his stature in the film circle, and we're trying to pair him up with enthusiastic, young, people who are keen to learn about the art of filmmaking, the art of storytelling. So I always tell the crew that, okay, we're going to go camping in the forests of Bhutan for about 6 weeks. We're going to learn how to make a movie, and at the end, we will have a movie. That's how we are going to approach this project.
I would say it's very different from the last 3 films Rinpoche has made, and like Pawo was saying, and in this one there's, I think 90% of the film there's no dialogue, and I think 90% of the film as well, like the characters are masked, so we don't see their face, we don't see their eyes, so we don't capture those emotions that you usually do with in movie making. So that in itself for me as a cameraman is challenging. We did a test sometime end of last year in Bidung in Bartam, and we handpicked a few actors in the area, and Rinpoche was like pushing them to as we were filming that, now act, you have to feel embarrassed in this scene, in this shot. And the actor was telling me, he was trying really hard, and later on off camera he was telling me it's really hard to convey embarrassment, behind a mask.
Behind a mask, exactly.
Yeah. I think this is probably going to be Rinpoche's is definitely his most ambitious film.
Also, I think the important thing here to remember is when you are an artist, the most important thing that we crave for is the creative freedom. And a lot of times when you make movies, when you want to do these things, of course, a lot of people are involved. And the main thing is investors. So when you make a movie, because of the money that comes in, sometimes you have to listen to the investors. If the movie is going to cost 60 lakhs, if someone gives 50 lakhs, suddenly he has a say in the creative input of the artist involved in the movie. So the good thing about this movie is that even though it is, as Jigme put it, it is ambitious, it is daring, it is a movie that it is not filtered down by inputs from other people. It is as how Dzongsar Khyentse Rinpoche wants to tell his story.
Yes,
and
you were telling me it's funded by, the fund
yes,
is raised from Kickstarter.
it's a the project is being crowdfunded, and so there is no one big investor. It is everyone who wants to be part of this project can, help, even if it's $1, it goes into the film.
You were sharing about the experience with Vara.
Not only Vara, but I think any other big budget film. A lot of times you hear that, the director couldn't work properly because he didn't have the creative freedom and all that. In Vara, one of the things I was telling you was we had hoped to make the movie in Hindi because it is supposed to take place in India. It is supposed to be in a backward Indian village. But then, suddenly when the investors are involved, when the money comes in, then a lot of times it's like, we have to make sure we don't go at a loss or something like that. So, Vara was, as you know, shot in English. And I think that from my side, that is something that I wished it didn't happen. I wished it was in Hindi actually.
The movie is being shot at Pematang. So how will the visuals be?
Well, Pematang is fairly remote, and we are shooting. The story takes place in the jungle. In terms of visuals, we're trying to show, I guess, like a southern environment of Bhutan.
Tropical forest?
Yeah, more tropical. In terms of visuals, I don't know. I'm thinking more of all the challenges that because there are scenes which will require, let's say about 300 background extras, and then it happens at night. So just the technical challenges of lighting those scenes at night with 300 people in Pematang, but also trying to achieve what what Rinpoche has envisioned.
And the script of the film, it's written by Rinpoche himself?
Yes.
Or?
It's all of travelers and magicians, the cup, Vara, even Hema Hema. It is all Rinpoche's own creation, the story, everything.
So what is the story exactly going to be about?
Well, it is the story of actually identity. I think it really boils down to if you, Sonam Dema, for 1 week starting tomorrow, you could get away with everyone not knowing you are Sonam Dema, would you still be a righteous person? So the story is about a man who enters a festival. It's a secret festival, fictional festival in a remote part of Bhutan, where people enter and they give up their identity. They all wear masks and they take part in a festival lasting 2 weeks. So what happens when you're given that much freedom? A lot of times people crave for freedom, but is freedom really a good thing,
If you are good at hiding behind your mask, you will not be known now or for the rest of your life. Your masks are your identity.
Your masks are what protect you.
Your power is that you are not known. Do you really want to be known?
霧が深いよ霧が深いよくすんだ海だよぼやけた空だよ
And Jigme, you have worked with Rinpoche in a movie Vara. So how was your experience?
It was a good learning experience because I was there in the camera department, so it was nice to be able to work under Rinpoche cinematographer. Back then was Bradford Young, who was like an up and coming American cameraman in the U.S. I feel like I learned a lot just watching him, the way he used the camera to tell the story, the way he lit the scenes. And it was also first time watching Rinpoche be a director on set.
How is he when you work with him personally? Is he a taskmaster?
No, Rinpoche I would say he's very relaxed on set, and he knows what he wants, but I noticed that he gives a lot of freedom to his actors in terms of performance.
Vara was the first film I worked on, and I never knew how difficult it is to make a film. Jigme always tells me that they have a ranking of the most difficult jobs in the world. Filmmaking is always in there. But also working with a lot of professionals. I think Vara was also one of Rinpoche's first movies where he had a big budget, where he had professionals from all over the world, and just to get a sense of the professionalism in the film set. But also as a photographer myself, I learned a lot. Like Jigme was saying, Bradford Young was the cinematographer there, and the importance of when not to light the scene, I think is so important. And I think that's something a lot of young photographers and cinematographers also need to learn. We shouldn't be scared of the shadows.
How important is visual in storytelling?
Well, it is very important. I mean, because in the end, movies is telling stories with a moving image. As long as the visuals fit within the context of storytelling, I think that's then it served its purpose. And at least that's how I feel as a cinematographer. I want to be able to tell stories using the camera, whether it's composition or lighting.
There are films where there are no dialogues. So going back to Hema Hema, is it going to be something like that?
Well, there's not much dialogue, but the characters do make sounds to communicate between themselves. I guess for this film, Hema Hema, body language will play a big part. Yeah.
So are the masses like coming with expressions, or? I feel
That's very interesting because our lead character, they don't have names when they go into this festival. We only call them by the mask that they wear, and then the lead character's mask is called the expressionless mask. But going back to storytelling, I think in the world we live in now, we really need to be spoon-fed. When we look at stories, we really need to be spoon-fed information. This is an example Rinpoche also always uses when he is talking to his actors and talking to us on the set. He's like, nowadays when he watches movies, it's like when the person is hungry, the viewer expects the person to be like, oh, I'm so hungry, And he was like, but, we need to tell stories, but not so direct. Let there be space for the viewers to interpret it himself. For example, if he's hungry, maybe when he sees a bowl of emadatse or something, you can see a little bit drool coming out of his mouth or something like that, So that it's a different way of storytelling, I think.
So, Pawo, you have published some books on photography also, and then you are quite popular on social media. What motivated you to get a venture into movies?
Well, it's very interesting because I don't really identify myself as a photographer. I always tell people that I am a storyteller. I've always been a storyteller. Ever since I was a kid, I loved hearing inspiring stories and, connecting people with stories. So, and you could say that I got into photography for my love of storytelling. And like you said, I am a photographer, and I have written quite a few books and a few articles and all that on photography and telling stories. So I think being in this circle, being Jigme's cousin, being Dzongsar Khyentse Rinpoche's student, being in this circle as a lover of stories, it was just like, I think, a natural progression to go into films now. So it's another platform where we can tell stories,
And Jigme, you have recently completed Losum Chisum, and then you have also been working with the upcoming film Honey Giver.
Right.
So how are these films different from different?
Losum Chusum is a short film made and directed by Dechen Roder. Well, one is a short. Honey Giver is a feature-length film. It's her first. It's actually also my first feature film in Bhutan. They're quite similar in when it comes to storytelling because they're both made by Dechen, and she has her own way of, or let's say her own vision of telling the story. So Losum Chusum was kind of like a prep for the Honey Giver. Yeah.
So, and then your personal views. What do art films provide to society?
Art films art, I think, is something that our world really needs. Because, as they say, art is food for the soul, as they say. It is something that inspires, it is something that inspires, invokes feelings, emotions. And sometimes I think we need that. We need that. Not only like cinema or film, but be it music, painting, photography, poetry, writing. Because of that, I think it is, what do you say, very essential, important in our world.
I mean, there's also, I would say, art films do have a niche market. It's not really made for the masses. Though I would say Dichen's Honey Giver, it would be maybe considered an art independent film. But we started off, and I think we would like, to be, it is a film for a Bhutanese audience, for the masses. Even though maybe it doesn't follow the same like masala flavor. There's no, we don't have any item songs or dances in it. There is a bit of romance.
Another thing I think why art film is needed, and going back, not only art film but art itself. I remember as I was a child, I watched a movie called Life is Beautiful. Every time I watch that movie, it is so beautiful because it tells a story of an Italian father, Jewish, trying to keep his family alive during the Second World War when the Jews were being killed by the Nazis, and him desperately trying to keep his family alive through that ordeal. But the more beautiful aspect is he is trying to, shelter his young son from the realities and the harshness of war. And the whole movie, he makes, he's threatened there by, all this really, really life-threatening issues. But there he is making the whole thing into a game for his son. And when you watch a movie like that, when you walk away from it, you feel inspired to be a better parent. I'm a parent myself. Every time I watch that, I feel like, I have to, we have to be like that. So that is I think, the purpose of storytelling, the purpose of, as you might call it art movies, but that is the purpose. I think what it instills when the person leaves the cinema hall after watching the movie, the feelings the person has.
And is it important to have own identity or narrative in a film?
I would say yes. Certain films, do require an identity for the narrative. I think that it depends. It depends on the film. It's like we were talking about, Transformers, and in there I don't think there is much. There's not much identity or within the film. It's just a lot of explosions, and it's a movie made for for thrills and excitement. Like, let's say we're talking about, I was talking about Life is Beautiful, about this Jewish Italian father. That film in itself has there's an identity in there. We can your audience relate to it. Your audience go through that experience.
I think, as I was talking earlier, artists, creative people, they crave for the creative freedom, but also it really boils down to one's motivation on why you're making a film. If your purpose is to make a film that is a blockbuster film that will do well, like we keep going back to Transformers, but I'm sure that's what Michael Bay intended. I'm sure it wasn't his intention for people to leave the cinema hall having something more invoked, having something else invoked. But I think right now in our world, we really tend to follow the set norms of society. Like, okay, this is the way things are done. We have to do things that way. So as an artist, I think it is so important to have your your independency. We have to be brave to do things the way we want to. Why should I do things that, this is how society does it, so I should do it like that? I think we need to be braver than that. It's very important, I think, to tell your own story.
Some filmmakers, they were trying for art endowment fund, and then they feel government should support them. So do you feel it's important for government to interfere as well, to support the filmmakers to come up with good films?
I think just to support the arts in general, yeah. And you know, film is such a you know, it's a medium that you know, that it can expose, you know, for, you know, the masses. So yeah, I think that it'll be nice eventually if there's some sort of funding or support, that grants that come from the government, you know, eventually. Yeah.
Definitely. You know, this, I'm glad you asked me this question, because sometimes I go into rant mode, you know, and something,
Not sometimes.
something that really has been frustrating for me is the lack of art in Bhutan. It is evident everywhere, not only for appreciation of art and artists, but you know, for the artists. I mean, the artists themselves are not given appreciation, but then the people living in Bhutan, they don't seem to appreciate art, and that is evident everywhere around our country, especially so in Thimphu. And I know that the current government, one of their standing pledges was, oh, we'll give an art endowment, which I've never heard of after that. So this is a plead to the government. Please, if you want, please, you know, help artists in Bhutan, because they really need help. Like I keep saying, you know, we can talk about the things that are going around our life, but, you know, for people to experience art, for people, like, imagine if Bhutan can come out with amazing films like Life is Beautiful, or even Tokyo Story. You know, Tokyo Story is such a simple story. It's such a simple story, but when you watch it, what the person goes back after watching that, you know. And there are so many talented artists in Bhutan. They're just waiting to get the help, to be discovered, you know. So I think the government really needs to help artists.
And last question, any word of advice for the local filmmakers?
I think for all just filmmakers, you know, making films is a tough job. So you know, I remember when I started pursuing this career in filmmaking, Rinpoche told me, you know, he gave me a piece of advice. He said, never give up, because there's going to be many times on the road where you're going to think, like, what am I doing? You know, I could be spending my time doing something else, and you know, being more financially, let's say, or secure. So I've held that dear and to me. So I would say, yeah, that would be my advice. But, you know, move back to them, that, you know, never give up. As long as you're passionate, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think from my side, you know, I'm a very novice filmmaker, actually. I've just been involved in 2 films. But as an artist, as a photographer, because I think photographers and filmmakers, we all fall under the same category as artists, you know, visual artists. As a photographer, I think my advice to the young artists and filmmakers of Bhutan is, number one, as Jigme said, don't give up, you know. Because we are artists, we will not always have times that are up, you know, upward times. We might do well today, we might do badly tomorrow, you know. It's up and down life, you know. Sometimes you're appreciated, sometimes you're not appreciated. Your one film that you make today might do really well, tomorrow it might be a total failure. But we should be brave to never give up. We should be brave to have our own identity, and you know, use even the down times as like an inspiration to motivate us for the times that will come tomorrow.
Okay, Jimmy and Pao, thank you very much for your time, and all the best with your upcoming films.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
霧が深いよくすんだ海だよぼやけた空だよ